So in this explainer, we're not just taking a look back at history. We are actually deconstructing a psychological blueprint, a guide for enduring the absolutely unimaginable, built by one of the most resilient figures of our time, Nelson Mandela.
27. 27 years. I mean, just take a moment and let that number really sink in. That's how long Nelson Mandela was in prison. For a lot of people, that's an entire lifetime.
It's a question that's honestly hard to even wrap your head around, right? How does any person endure nearly 3 decades of isolation, of hardship, of having their freedom completely denied, without breaking?
But here's the thing. The answer isn't some kind of innate superpower he was just born with. No, it was a strategy. It was a meticulously constructed psychological architecture, a blueprint that we can actually study.
Okay, so let's really dive into this. We're going to explore this core idea that Mandela's incredible strength wasn't a gift. It was a skill he built, day by day, inside the walls of his own prison.
And this, right here, is the fundamental takeaway. Resilience isn't something you either have or you don't. It's an architecture. And you know what? Like any building, it can be learned, it can be designed, and it can be constructed. So that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to break down the psychological scaffolding that Mandela used, pillar by pillar, and really see how this whole thing works. All right, our first pillar. This is the absolute foundation for this entire structure. It's all about a profound mental shift, the move from seeing yourself as a victim to operating as a strategist.
And what's so fascinating is when you put these two side by side. A victim mindset, it's stuck in the past, it's just reacting to things, and it feels powerless. Mandela just refused this. He adopted a strategist mindset, always looking to the future, patient, and constantly scanning for opportunities, even inside a prison cell. He famously learned Afrikaans, the language of his oppressors, not to give in, but to understand them and one day negotiate from a position of strength.
And this leads us to a really key concept, strategic patience. Now, this is not just waiting around. This is active endurance. It's using that time of hardship, even if it's decades, as a period of intense preparation for a future you are determined to create. Suddenly, every single day becomes a training day.
Okay, let's move on to our second pillar, and you'll see how this builds on that foundation. This one, it might sound a little counterintuitive at first, but it's the power of acceptance. It's all about seeing the brutal, hard facts of your reality without surrendering to them.
And this is so crucial to get. So many of us think acceptance means resignation, defeat. It's the complete opposite. Truly accepting your situation, the good, the bad, and the ugly, is the only logical starting point from which you can take effective, meaningful action. The psychological term for this is radical acceptance. It's a conscious choice. You stop wasting all that energy fighting what you cannot change, like the fact that you're in a prison cell, and instead, you redirect all of that energy toward what you can control, your response, your studies, your influence on the people around you.
And that brings us to the third and final pillar of this whole architecture, mastering your own internal world through deliberate emotional regulation. I mean, if you're going to be a strategist, your emotions have to serve you, not control you.
So how do you actually do that? Well, it's a process. First, you have to isolate the feeling, that blinding anger at an injustice, or the deep despair of another year passing. You have to name it. Second, you analyze it. Why is it here? What is it trying to tell you? And third, and this is the most important part, you choose your response instead of just reacting.
And when you do this, the outcome is just brilliant. When you can do this consistently, your emotions stop being these random impulses that can derail you. They become data. They become tools. Anger can become fuel for discipline. Fear can become a signal for caution. They start working for your long-term strategy, not against it.
All right, so we've taken apart Mandela's blueprint. Now let's talk about how these same architectural principles can be applied to build our own resilience to face our own challenges, whether they're big or small.
So let's recap that core architecture real quick. It all starts with that cognitive shift from victim to strategist. Then you build on that with radical acceptance, which creates the foundation for real action. And finally, you reinforce the whole structure by practicing emotional regulation, turning your feelings into valuable tools. That's the three-part blueprint.
And it's just so important to remember, this isn't just some fascinating story about a historical figure. These are practical, universal psychological tools that any of us can learn and apply to navigate career setbacks, personal hardships, or any kind of adversity that life throws our way. So I'll leave you with a question to think about. Looking at this blueprint, the shift in mindset, the practice of acceptance, the regulation of emotion, what's the first brick you will consciously lay for your own architecture of resilience?